Welcome to the Scoop World Order. I have one of my favorite guys in the entire world today, one of the great experts at the wide receiver position, and one of my former colleagues, my man, Zach Smith, the true menace to sports. How you doing tonight, my man?
Doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on. Scoop World Order, huh? Here we are.
Yeah, I'm not real creative. It's like I'm like Coach Meyer. I just like to steal stuff and say that I created it, and then everybody gives me credit for it. So, it's fun. But I mean, I haven't been sued yet, so that's good. I mean, we haven't sold enough merchandise. We're not relevant enough for it to be that big of a deal.
Hey, you know what I've always said about my show is if I get sued, it'll be the greatest marketing ever. Like, please sue
Absolutely.
me. Like when Tom Herman
Absolutely.
in Texas tried to sue me, I was like, oh my gosh, dumbest thing you ever did.
Yeah. Put it on ESPN, put it on CBS Sportsline, put your merchandise everywhere. It's like
Right.
Oklahoma people are ordering it now. They know that you've got your T-shirts, and I mean, can't beat it, dude. So, what do you think of what's going on right now? What's your opinion of the Big Ten versus the SEC? You know, the SEC is pretty much full steam ahead. They've got a schedule out. They're not stopping. The Big Ten doesn't have a schedule out. Kind of hemming and hawing, saying that it might not be a season. Is there really that? Since you've coached both conferences, you know both conferences.
Yeah.
Is there that big of a difference between the two in terms of kind of, I don't feel like the SEC is going to stop. Like they don't care. They're playing football this year. Is that just my perception, or do you think that's like a reality thing?
No, I mean, that's definitely reality. It's not even debatable. I mean, when all this stuff started, they were like, oh, the season's in jeopardy. I said, listen, you could take all these riots, everything going on in the world, and you ain't seen nothing until you see Alabama cancel a football season. Like you're going to see monuments coming down, buildings being burned. There is no way that these schools down south are not playing football. There's no way. And my take from the beginning was if the Big Ten or Ohio State or originally it was Michigan. Michigan, the governor came out and said no, nothing until December. And this was like back in March. And I was like, holy shit, that'll hold them back. I mean, it might just destroy the whole program. I mean, it'll be a 30-year setback if the Big Ten doesn't play football compared to the SEC because that's recruiting, that's notoriety. I mean, if you don't get to watch the Buckeyes play on Saturday, but you can watch Alabama, every kid's going to want to go to Alabama, not Ohio State. And it's just the impact would be astronomical. So I've said from the beginning the SEC is going to play, and I'm curious what the Big Ten's doing right now. Like, why not announce the schedule? I get like, Rutgers has cases, and Michigan State doesn't want to play football because they stink now. Like, I get it, but it's like, what is the end game here?
Yeah, do you think that there's some sandbagging by schools like Michigan State and schools like Rutgers who have new coaching staffs? They have they didn't get spring ball. They didn't get a full summer conditioning. They didn't really get a chance to get a full, Michigan State didn't even have a recruiting cycle because Mel Tucker got there so late. Do you think there's, because I mean, they suspended everything just now, and I don't think their kids are back right now. They're still like on quarantine. Do you think that they're hoping that there isn't football? As crazy as that sounds, because, monetarily, like it obviously makes us to always play football, but do you think if you're Mel Tucker or you're Greg Schiano, you're going to be like heartbroken if there isn't football?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to like you get a new, and it's not just them, right? It's even like, let's say LSU, where you have a new coordinator and a new quarterback. Like you take away spring ball from Rutgers or spring ball from Michigan State with a new staff, new program, new scheme. You take that away, they're behind an 8 ball. Like they're screwed. And it's like, so they're sitting there now like, man, it'd be great if we didn't play, and then we could have spring to get our program up for next season. So I think, I don't know if they're sandbagging, but I promise you, they don't really want to play.
Yeah, plus you get another recruiting class in.
Absolutely.
I mean, because we've seen like the older guys at Michigan State and Rutgers, and it's like Deadwood. It's like you want to get, it's like, like Coach Meyer, like he had a couple of classes, at like the 2012 13s. I mean, they were okay, but that next year, when you had like Joey Bosa in 13 and Ezekiel, and it's like when you start getting your guys in there, then you get 2-3 classes, and then all of a sudden you're winning a national championship because your recruiting is much better. I think that's something I'm looking at. Like, so if I'm, even if I'm like Jeff Halfley, it's like, I picked the 1 year, and I don't cry for these guys because they're getting paid very well, so I don't care. But it's like, it's hard when you're like Phil Matus and you're a strength coach and you can't run a strength program. If you're like doing a Zoom meeting and you know the players, man. You're at the mercy of them saying they're actually doing stuff, and some do, some don't. Like Coach Meyer always said, and it's interesting. What are the percent odds that the Big Ten plays this fall?
I think it's almost 100. I mean, I don't see, I guess maybe 90. I mean, I don't see how they could not. I mean, you're gonna just absolutely ruin your athletic budget for every other sport. And I get it doesn't always come down to money. And I'm not trying to have a COVID conversation here on like the actual threats of the disease, but if other conferences are going to play, they have to play. They have to.
Yeah, and it's just so funny that now all of a sudden football's dangerous because of COVID. Right. I'm like, are you like, I mean, there's kids that have sickle cell that die of heat stroke, and there's kids that get maimed and they tear their Achilles and they literally become paralyzed. I've seen a kid in Ohio State become paralyzed. It was my teammate in 06, and it's like, but now football's too dangerous. And I'm like, okay, sure. So you are this is a quick little role play. So I'm a Big Ten wide receiver coach. You're an SEC coach. Big Ten decides, all right, we aren't playing football. It's not safe. You are recruiting, like a Jerry Jeudy, a top 5 wide receiver. How do you use that against me? You're at Florida. You're the wide receivers coach, and we're in a battle. And all of a sudden, I have the rug ripped out from me. How would you use that against me?
I mean, it's all going to start with the fact that down south they care more, right? If you're not going to play football up north, you come to the SEC, and we care more about football. We care more about your future. You can't take a year off when you're on a 3-year plan to go to the NFL and make millions, right? You need to play football, and you need to play in front of people that care and are passionate. And the thing would be like, all right, what's to say this doesn't happen in a year or two? Your senior year, your last year, it's your junior year. You're supposed to be a first-round pick, and the Big Ten cancels the season. What do you do then? Too late. You should have went to Alabama, right? And so that would be my entire pitch was, you come here and we're going to develop you, and you're going to play football, because football is king and priority.
It's crazy I'm even saying this, but it's funny, my Xbox 360 simulation of NCAA 14, we started 2 months ago. It was right when we started doing these simulations where literally the premise was this year's Ohio State team. And like out loud, I said, Ohio State wasn't sure if they were going to play because of COVID. So they moved to the SEC West. And then I added like Clemson as the opener. And then their out of conference turned into Wisconsin and Michigan. So they had to play they played Bama in the Horseshoe the week before Michigan. They played at Death Valley, LSU. They played Arkansas. They played, it was like, they played the Gators in the swamp. Like I gave literally the most ridiculous schedule of all time, because I was like, the conference commissioner says that, hey, we're not going to play, and new athletic director at Ohio State, Kirk Barton, says, all right, we're going to where it just means more. We're moving to the SEC West, and it was funny because I was like, those guys aren't stopping. Like my man Jerry Cocan, he's down in Bama. He owns a bunch of Freightliner dealerships. He's like, they aren't stopping. He's like, if they stop football down here, it's like you said, they will burn the entire state down. Those people do not care. Like those people at LSU do not care. They will burn, everything down. And I personally love that, because it's just like, that means that they really, really do care. Like, they want football, and it's like, we've canceled half of the baseball season. We've canceled a bunch of basketball, a bunch of hockey. Like nobody cares about that. But when you get to football, then that's where the buck stops. You don't stop football, because that's the heartbeat. That's, the heartbeat of the entire country is when there's college football, high school football, pro football. But yeah, that's, and that would be my pitch. And what's your take on these kids opting out? Like Micah Parsons opted out tonight. And to me, as a player, the skill development is, I don't know. The skill development, losing a year of skill development is insane to me. But what are your thoughts on that? I
don't get the ploy. Other than using this pandemic and all this madness as a reason to just not play. I don't get the ploy. What's the reason behind it? Because you could get COVID, but you're not going to get better, and that's going to affect your draft status. And what happens, because this pandemic's not going anywhere. I don't care what anyone says. So what are you going to do next year when you get drafted by the Giants? Are you not going to play for them either? Like, how long are we sitting out here? Forever? Because it's a virus. It's not going away. Like,
Mm.
I don't understand what their thought process was. And I really believe, I mean, knowing Micah Parsons somewhat in recruiting, like this was just a reason to him be like, all right, cool, I'm done. I'm going to get paid. Like, this is a great reason and people won't hate me. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
now players, it's almost like, I don't know, it's wild. First players sitting out bowl games, which I completely understood. I won't say I agreed with it, but it's like one game, meaningless game, sit it out, right? You already put your junior year on tape, but now it's like sitting out the entire year. Like you saw how that worked for Maurice Claret and Mike Williams when they didn't play for a year or two. It's like it, you just lost out on a not only like you said development, but just like staying status quo, like plateauing, just playing football to stay as good as you were. Like they're not going to play football for a whole year.
And most guys at that age, you know, when you're 19, 20, 21, like you still make leaps and bounds. I mean, you get leaps and bounds better.
No,
Like,
no,
yeah, like
no.
Mike Thomas from like year 2 to 3. I mean, it was like, you know, he was redshirted year 2, then year 3 he was a baller, and then year 4, I mean, he became a second round pick. It's like you see O linemen that you know really don't play. I mean, Wyatt Davis, like didn't play a lot his first 2 years, but last year he was the best guard in America. So, you know, and that's the thing that it kills me because like football, it's so hard. Like, I mean, some positions, I think receiver, you can develop a little bit more than you can on like the O line because like the O line, there's nothing you can really do to simulate like one-on-one pass rush. Like, there's nothing that you can do outside of go against Chase Young that's like going against Chase Young. You know, and for you guys, it's the same. If you got a guy who's got to go against Jeff Okudah every day, you know, it's just mentally you better be sharp and bring it, work on your technique and craft. But you know, I just the like no skill development and just like going to like a performance center for God, like I mean, for how long? For 9, 10 months? Like
And
I
just
don't know.
think about it, Kurt. Like think about your time as a player and as a coach. Like those practices with no pads, like the pajama practices, you don't get anything done. You don't get better. Like you have to play the game full pads with contact. You have to play it to get better. What are you going to do at a training facility? You going to pad up and do one-on-ones against Chase Young? No. Like even if you do pass pro, you're going to do it with t-shirts on. That doesn't make you better.
No, and a lot of those places they don't do that because you don't do that at the combine. I mean,
Right.
they're all combine training centers. So it's like, why am I doing one-on-ones when all that matters is my pro agility and my 40, and individual position work, like running over bags and running, different routes. Yeah, it's really weird. Like I was going back and forth thinking about how would I react to a teammate doing that? Because I played with a ton of like, Ted Ginn and those guys left early. Like if this was going on and like say like Teddy Ginn left early before his like junior year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was hard. I mean, in my head when we were playing you guys, when we were playing the Gators and you guys were killing us and Ted broke his leg, I didn't know what was wrong with him. I'm like, dude, shoot it up. Let's go. We need you, dude. Like go stand out there and be a decoy. But I didn't realize how severe it was because I didn't know what was wrong with him. I remember like we're in like the second quarter against you guys and I'm sitting there and I'm like, where the hell's Ted? Like, where's he at? Like, I mean, did he already declare? And I didn't know that he got his leg broken half by Roy Hall, but I was like, oh my God, like of all the games where we don't have our best player, it's like that's
Right.
not the one you don't want to have Teddy. It's like I tell people it's like if when you guys played Oklahoma and they had Bradford, it'd be like if Tebow got knocked out in the first play. Then you had to like roll Jeff Brantley out there against Sam Bradford. It would have been like it's not quite as fun. But I don't know. It's just, but I like if I was in those shoes and I was like even if I was a first round pick, like I just would feel it'd be weird to just walk out on my teammates when you're like, I mean, that kid he might have been a captain. I mean, I know he's kind of a douche, but like talent wise and hype wise, like he might have been a captain, but it's hard to leave your boys, man, because like once you get to the league, they're not your boys anymore. They're your coworkers, and it's a different element. From there, you heard about the Ryan Day Harbaugh dust up today. What's your take on that? Is that pretty commonplace, or is that something that's kind of out of the woodwork?
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of it, so I don't think it's commonplace. It's wild. But I think what you saw with Wyatt Davis and Justin Fields coming out talking about they want to beat the brakes off of Michigan. I've never heard that out of an Ohio
Nope.
State player. I haven't heard it. And some of the stuff you guys had on your message boards about, back and forth between Ryan and Harbaugh on a Big Ten conference call is like, I know Ryan really, really well, and he's a very reserved, calculated, very intelligent, like above the line responder, right? Especially in an interview setting. But he also is very, he's not going to take any shit. And if somebody says something, he's going to get really, really pissed. And he would say something like, they better put a cap on these games because I'm going to put 100 on you. He would say that if he got pissed enough, and then get the players involved. Like he's getting the hype build up for this season now.
Dude, I'm telling you, like when the official Ohio State football Twitter posted those quotes, I was like, oh yeah, something was definitely said, because that's something
definitely
a beat writer would post, but our official Twitter handle put, we're going to beat the brakes off of Michigan, because that's what I was like, something bad was definitely said today, because you don't, if you're named a captain, you're like, it's an honor to be a captain, honor to be like, and we're going to beat the brakes off Michigan, like
yeah,
what? Like we don't even, we're going to play Michigan, but so something was said that riled up the troops, and I was like, hey, more power to you. I was like, I hope we play in week 1, because we got a veteran O-line, we've got Justin, we've got Trey Sermon, they've got a new quarterback, 4 new starters on the O-line. I was like, let's play in week 1, get it done, before they shut the whole world down.
That'd be the worst thing ever for them, ever.
Oh yeah.
You talk about, because they need some games to try to develop these players and give them experience. You've played in it. I've coached in it. I can't imagine having all those new starters at those key positions and just rolling out in that game 1. Like what?
Oh, dude. Yeah, like the one that's scary is 4 new offensive linemen.
Oh my God,
that's
terrifying.
scary. That's like, oh my God, because those guys all got drafted, and we beat those guys pretty bad last year. But it's like those guys all got drafted. So that's a big, when you get a bunch of young guys playing O-line, it can get ugly really fast. What's the best motivational ploy that you ever saw Coach Meyer use? Because the one that I obviously always think of is in 2008, when I played for the Chicago Bears, my roommate was a kid named Chester Adams, who was a 350-pound right tackle from Georgia. And he was one of the guys dancing, like when they scored and, they like empty the bench, and you remember that. You were there, right? That was like, I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh, he's gonna go crazy on that one. And it's like, and then the next year was like when it was the big payback and he called the timeouts. But were there any other moments? You could dive into that a little deeper, because I always loved that he called timeouts at the end of the game to get like Emmanuel Moody 2 more carries. I was like, right. Oh God, that's savage. I don't know if I've seen that since, but maybe dive into that a little bit, and then if there's any other ones that you thought of it during your time at Florida, where it's like, they had to do like 225 push-ups because that's how many rushing yards Sean had, or whatever it was, 180 or whatever. Like anything else like that?
Oh my gosh, so many things. He's a psychology major. That's his whole game.
You can just stop at psycho, by the way.
Yeah, and there's no doubt.
Psychology.
There's no doubt. But I guess I have there's one thing, and you were definitely there for it. It was I think 2012 after Alabama beat Notre Dame, and we just went 12-0, doing well in recruiting. Everyone's kind of feeling good. It's an off season, so it was like the first staff meeting after the bowl games, all the bowl games. And he came in, and it was one of those things like you went to work, and Tom Herman and I talked about it. It was like you almost felt too comfortable, like too good. You're like, man, things are going well. Like we feel almost too good. Like when things felt good, you were uncomfortable because you knew he was about to blow it up. And he came into a staff meeting and just went off on every coach, about every player, just blew it up. And I remember sitting there, and I've known this guy my whole life. I've been working for him since 2005. So I know him. Like when he calls me like every name in the book, like I don't take it at face value. I know he's just trying to motivate, but no one else really knew him. We'd only been there for like, I don't know, a year, under a year. And so he does it. And you had like 55-year-old men like scrambling, like redoing their offices. And I'm just sitting back watching this genius motivate some of the most successful coaches, old grown men, and it was like, holy cow, this guy's brilliant.
So basically you're talking like Tim Hinton and Ed. like
Oh yeah.
shuffling the papers around and
Oh yeah.
redoing the board. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it was funny with Ed. One of the funniest things ever was that, I was teaching the guys all the plays, and like Coach Meyer was always like real militant about, this is, you circle the mic, you box the read key,
Oh yeah.
you
Oh
put a
yeah.
triangle on the, if it's triple option on the pitch guy.
Yep.
And I had that, and I literally like wrote it up on the board. I said, circle equals mic, square equals, read, for like book, triangle equals, pitch. And he came in there one day and he's like looking at like the notes I put up there for the guys. And I'm just in there, cutting film or whatever. And Ed's in there and he's like, what's this? And I was like, and I don't see anything. Ed gets up. He's like, yeah, I put that out just for, when we're teaching the kids so that they know that, so they know that put the, the circle on the mic, the square, because we have them drawn up the plays. And I'm like, and Coach Meyer's like, that just made my entire day. He's like, I can't believe how good you're doing in here. Like, the fact that this is up here and those guys are learning it this way, the way we teach it in the staff room. He's like, that's made my entire day. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, whatever.
That's Ed Warner. Ed Warner.
Dude, I'm telling you, man.
Smoke and mirrors.
Oh my God.
And that son of a bitch just falls upward. I don't get it.
I'm telling you, I was sitting there, I was like, and like, I didn't really care. Like, it doesn't, that's not, it doesn't make or break my, but I was just like, like, it's whatever. Like, it is what it is. I laugh. But I was just like, that was the funniest thing in the world. He's like, jumped his gap, put that up there.
It's so funny.
But
I will tell you, hey, I got one more for you though that I just thought of, and I don't know if I've even told this story on my show, but the other probably greatest motivation story that people don't know, like you talked about some public ones that people kind of know about, but there was one time that Urban found out that coaches weren't writing letters, right? Those little stupid recruiting letters that no one opens. Coaches weren't writing them, right? And so
one second. Talk about, for 1 second, every staff meeting starts off, every coach has to write like 4 letters to the same 4 kids.
Yeah, right.
So like I would have to write to Ezekiel, so he would get like 15 to 20 in one day in his mailbox from us. Good luck versus St. Thomas Aquinas. Saw you on 24-13 last week. Keep bowling.
Yeah, that's the dumbest shit in the world. I'm sitting like, you're sitting here like, why does this offensive guard want me to write to him? I'm the receiver. I used to write the dumbest shit in the world. I'd be like, come block for the quarterback so my guys can catch the ball. Like, what do I say? It was just,
it was like, I'm going to commit to that one right there.
Yeah, right. And it's all about the logo going in the mailbox. That's
it's just the volume. It's like, oh, look at how much Ohio State loves me. They sent me 20 envelopes today.
Right.
Great.
So Urban had this thing like you had to write like 50 letters a week. And so Corey Dennis was my GA, and I was like, Corey, I'm not writing shit. Like, it doesn't help me in recruiting. I'm going to spend time on actually recruiting kids. So you're in charge. Like, you write all my letters. I'm not doing it. And so Urban blew up about coaches weren't writing letters. And I'm sitting here like, oh shit. Because this is his son-in-law. I'm like, Corey, you didn't snitch, did you? But he's like, no, coach, we've written 50 letters a week. I write them every week. I was like, all right, cool. So I was the only coach that wrote letters. I didn't, but no one else did. So this man goes on a tirade and he's blowing up. And I think it was maybe Larry Johnson or someone that he was really pissed at, but he didn't want to go after him because he kind of had a mature stature, a very high respect.
Larry's 70 years old. It's like,
And so Urban went to get on his elliptical at lunch. And if you ever got a call from Urban during his lunch workout, it was a bad deal. Run. He texted me and Corey Dennis together and said, on elliptical, come see me. And he spells come, C-O-M, and then the letter C, and then M-E. He doesn't want to write it all out. So he says it. So we get up there, and he just blows up on me and Corey about not writing letters. And then he fires me and fires Corey, his son-in-law. And he looked at Corey and he said, think about this. He goes, think about this. Now I have to go home and tell my daughter that her husband's a loser and I had to fire him. I was like, holy crap. Like, that's your son-in-law, man.
Oh, man. If you haven't been fired, you're not truly loved by Coach Meyer.
That's a fact. He fired his son-in-law.
I'm telling you, it's like, holy cow, man. It's like, but how did, with Corey, he said he wrote all the 50. Were they like tracking him, or was it just like he threw him in the mailbox and the little the girls up front just like put the stamps on him and threw him out? Like there's no tracking or anything or no metrics.
I mean, the Pantone had the girls up front like keeping track of how many letters came from, because each coach would have their name written above the like return address.
Yeah.
The girls up front would write it down, like Coach Smith sent 30 letters on Friday. Like they would just keep track of it for Pantone, because Pantone always loved to get coaches in trouble. He loved it. Like he used to always be like, you wrote down 8 schools, but you only went to 7. You're like, oh my God, bro.
He's like sitting in the office. He's in the basketball court doing tomahawk dunks.
Right.
You're like, you only went to 14 schools, and you said you put down 15. What's like, this extra mileage for, Zach?
Bro, calm down.
Speaking of motivation, this is a good one because you were with the Gators in 06. You guys smashed us, and it's like I've had to answer questions on that game. Like when I'm laying there in hospice dying, they'll probably come in and say, "What happened in the Florida game?" I'm like, I don't really know. Whatever. Like we got killed. Nothing went right. Turned the ball over. Personal fouls. Our best player, literally, I think honestly, he might be the only player who's still in the league from that game. Malcolm Jenkins is. But Teddy, so I mean, there's just not many guys left from 06 that are still in the league from either team. And it's one of those things where I remember him talking about, like, with Antonio Smith, like, you guys were like, would like scour the media guys. You find, oh, he's a walk-on? And so Coach Meyer had like a number 14 jersey printed up, taped it to the floor, and I could just see like Bubba Caldwell, Lewis Murphy, Percy Harvin, like all walking in, like wiping their cleats on the jersey every day. Like, what other stuff did you guys do? I mean, obviously schematically, you guys were great. You guys played hard. You guys were better. But like, was there anything like going into that game other than the fact that like, these guys haven't played anybody. They're all fat. They're slow. They don't have gold teeth, so we'll win there. Like, is there anything that's like, where you're like, we're gonna kick their ass because of this?
I think it was just the overall athleticism, especially of D linemen and linebackers. I mean, it was just, it was absurd down south, especially back then, like mid 2000s. It was just a different animal in that conference, and there was also an edge to Florida because you guys, I mean, it was almost like, all right, Ohio State's in, they're the clear 1 seed, and everyone was like, yeah, Florida, discard them. They should play Michigan again. And you're like, wait a minute, they just played them. Like, we're not even good enough to play. You want a rematch? And I think one of the cool things that happened was so I'm obviously from Columbus. I would come home before the bowl game, right?
Yeah.
I came home for Christmas, and I went to my in-laws' house at the time, big Ohio State fans, and all they'd do was talk trash about Urban and how bad of a guy he was. And so then I go to the Tuttle Mall, and at a little kiosk, they're selling footballs that say 2006 national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Like, they're selling them already.
Wow.
This is like 3 weeks before the game. So I bought like 3 of them and took them back to Gainesville. And they were put everywhere. I mean, all that propaganda was put everywhere. And then Urban started having GAs and people like, he was like, I don't even care if it's true, just make it up. Like, create an article that says that Ohio State tackle Kirk Barton says they already won the national championship. Like, he just wanted propaganda everywhere. Yeah, right.
Like, these Gators. What's the SEC? Who cares about the SEC?
Right. Terrible. He had so much fake propaganda and real propaganda just to give that team an edge. Like, they don't think you belong here. You got to show them like that you belong in this game.
I love it. I mean, I love Coach Meyer doing that crazy stuff because it's like, hell, it worked. It ginned it up, man. Because it's like when you're doing, like when you're in the moment, it was like we did a lot of things wrong. You guys were nails. We played the worst game all year. And a lot of it was because of you guys. It wasn't because, like, we just showed up and sucked. But, like, yeah, we did suck. But it was weird. I mean, it was just one of those weird nights. Like, I still hate that field. Like, it's funny because, and this is by no means an excuse or anything, but I said that is maybe the worst playing surface in the entire country. And, like, I remember watching the Clemson game this year. I said, watch the guys in the back end slip and fall. Because they have that stupid grass they wheel out on the conveyor belt, and then they bring it back in for the game. And
right. And if you remember our game, they had, not only do they do that stupid indoor grass that's terrible, but when you walked on the field, you walked on a field that was the Boise State game field. And then they just
Mhm.
put our game field on top of it. So you like walked on some grass, then stepped on some new sod, and you're like, there's two fields on top of each other right here. It was a nightmare.
It was awful. I mean, I actually have like the film from that game, and it's like you just see guys slipping all over the place. It was funny. The two worst surfaces I ever played on in my life were the Michigan game that year, the 1-2 game, because literally we played Minnesota like 2 weeks before the Michigan game, or maybe 3 weeks before the Michigan game, and then they ripped all the sod up and they put down a new field for that game, and like none of the roots took, so it looked like we were playing on like hay. Like I mean, it was like so. Then like right after that game, they ripped that grass up and they put down artificial turf, but it was like, you know, guys were slipping all over that, and I'm just like, good God, can't we grow grass? But yeah, it was interesting. Like I mean, when Coach Meyer, like when he said that, like they printed the jersey off and they're wiping the cleats on it and all the other stuff, I was just like, oh my God, that's genius. I was always like, and, you know, and the funny thing is, you know, with Coach is like he always had the Woody lockdown like it was Fort Knox, you know. And
Yeah.
I remember we were getting ready to play the Gators, and like we would have, I swear to God, we had every coach or whoever it was, like we would have like 800 people at practice. And I was like, well, Coach Meyer, you're not allowed to have like 8 people in for the bowl practices. Like it is locked down. It would be like literally 4 deep along the sideline because every high school coach, every junior day recruit, every sophomore day recruit, like, and I was like, I mean, damn, they do all of our stuff pretty cold. I was like, are we sure all those people really wanted us to win? Or was it like, you know, I mean, if I was Coach Meyer, I'd be like, put on this hat, go walk in there and take the notes down and be like, oh, this is what they're working on. This is what they think we're going to do. But I don't know. I was just like, that was kind of sloppy on our end, in my opinion. But I mean, it didn't matter. Like, you guys outclassed us that day. And I still haven't gotten my SEC residual check since I basically invented the SEC that day. So that's kind of garbage. Like, I mean, I was like in 04, Auburn went undefeated and they didn't even make it in the game. So, I mean, now it's like if an undefeated SEC school got left out of, you know, the national championship game, or I mean, now they have a 4-game playoff, but they would burn the entire country down. It would be worse than it is now.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
So we're going to have a 10-game schedule. We'll wrap it up with this. Is there any team that is going to open, you know, it's somewhere like I think about the point spreads constantly because I'm like, you know, Vegas is going to be the most wacky thing in the universe this year because if you hear like Justin Fields has COVID and they're getting ready to play Penn State, and then you hear like CJ Stroud has COVID, and then it's spread to Chris Olave and Trey Sermon and Wyatt Davis, and it's like Ohio State like at Purdue, like, you know, why could go from like 20 one way to 2 or 3? Like, I mean, it's this.
Oh, absolutely.
And like, and when people have like inside info like that, that is where it's going to be insane because you know it's like when a guy gets injured, you know, like if you know, like if there's a win total or, you know, I don't know. As a coach, I know you can never gamble or anything, but there were probably times where you're like, God damn, I get this inside information, like, God, I can just lay something on this. Like I knew in 2011 that Peyton Manning was not going to play. Like his neck was fused. It wasn't taking. He couldn't throw a ball 5 yards. It was like a month out of training camp. I knew he wasn't going to play. So the Colts, like their plus minus in Vegas, it was like 11 wins because they thought, oh yeah, Peyton, he might miss some camp, but he'll be ready for week 1 and he'll be Peyton. He'll throw 55 touchdowns, whatever. And like he couldn't throw a ball 5 yards. And I was like, and I looked at their schedule and like their pass rushers were like Mario Williams. I mean, like it was like, you know, Carlos Dunlap. I mean, it was like every week they're going against like 2 great pass rushers. They had a rookie left tackle, Costanzo, who's still there. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the easiest money I've ever seen. And of course, I was too stupid and I was too big of a puss to actually go lay like real money on it. But they went 1-15. They get Andrew Luck the next year. You know, and I mean, there had to have been a time like when you were coaching where you're just like, oh my God, if people knew this is not, you know, this is not going to be good for, you know, whatever. But this is going to be an interesting year with Vegas. But is there a Big Ten team that can actually challenge us this year? Like, I mean, I know the schedule's not out, but I've looked and I'm like, yeah, it's like, you know, Michigan is going to be down, in my opinion. Wisconsin, maybe. I mean, Wisconsin's always kind of like a maybe, but when we have Justin and all those guys, it's like it's hard to ever think we're going to be less than a 10 to 14 point favorite. But your opinion, is there anybody that can touch us?
No. I mean, you would have to have a complete disaster COVID outbreak, or you're going to have an Iowa or a Purdue, a game where you're just like, wait a minute, what? Like, there's not a team. The only team that even, and they're not close, but the closest team has got to be Penn State, and the best defensive player in the Big Ten just announced he's not playing. So, I mean, it's like, no, there's not. I mean, and that's sad. It's sad for the Midwest, because some of these schools need to start recruiting like Ohio State does to bring the brand up. But there's no one on Ohio State's level in the Midwest.
Yeah, and it's sad, and it's and like when they took Oregon off the schedule, I'm like, well, there's really nobody that's going to touch them.
Yeah, see, that was the game I was excited. I love Oregon this year. I think they got a hell of a team coming back, and I thought Justin Herbert was half the problem last year. So that's the game I was excited for. Yeah, it's a crime that game's not being played.
Yeah, you think you figure out like a way to like do like a neutral site in like a bubble, just because the money and revenue and TV money from that would make it, play it in Vegas at Raiders Stadium or something. Oh, like neutral site it, like I don't know, because like
I just don't get it how it's dangerous to go play Oregon, but it's not dangerous to fly to Minnesota. Like, what's the difference? Like,
there's no difference. Like it's like you're in the plane, the bus, the hotel, the stadium, the bus, the plane, and you're back to the Woody Hayes. Like that's it. Like you're not there to be a tourist. You're not there to be, and with Oregon, I don't know if they would have flown out a day early just because of the time difference. Because we did that when we played Washington, the Huskies in 2007. We flew out like Thursday night after practice, and then like you had like a whole day to get your body acclimated to the early start time. But I don't know how big of a deal that is. Like a lot of NFL teams on the West Coast, if they got to play a 1 o'clock game, they'll fly out a day early. But I don't know. It's going to be real interesting. I'm excited to see the schedule come out. So I appreciate you, brother. We are going to do me and the bank are going to come back on Menace to Sports. Well, I'll try and get that set up either tomorrow or the next day. I got to check what bank is, even though that he's been signed up. But hey, it's coming, so you better be ready. And I got him all hooked up on Zoom now and looking good like a movie star. And I'm excited to do round 2 with you, my man. So appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you. It'll be fun.
All right, my man. I'll talk to you. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
See you, bro.
Yeah.